Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our tournament series, and today, guys, I am playing an Aerocrastic Salad Cup. So my first round opponent was ParkMap here, and he is going to be playing Dark Elves in our first game in this best of 3, and I shall be going with Vampire Coast, which is pretty much my comfort pick in tournaments. So my apologies if you guys have been seeing a lot of Vampire Coast. It's probably because I've been practicing for this tournament and also practicing in general. So yeah, first game is going to be my Vampire Coast facing off against ParkMap's Dark Elves. So it looks like he does have a pretty solid build with Shades and Harpies to shut down deck gunners. This guy is certainly not messing around. Now, as far as my build goes, this is my very traditional build against Dark Elves. So front line's going to be deck end mobs. We have a couple bombers as well. The bomber's very good against hordes of Dark Elf infantry. So if they opt to go super wide against you, for example, coming in with a ton of Bleak Swords and Dread Spears and Corsairs, these guys can do a really good job at kind of chewing through those hordes. And yeah, they just give you good utility. Kind of keeps your opponent honest. And yeah, I'm starting to get a little bit better at them. For the longest time, I was really having a really difficult time making the zombie pirate gunnery mob bombers work well, but we'll see how they do in this matchup. Of course, we have Luther Harkin up in the sky. He's the classic competitive pick nowadays for Vampire Coast. There are a couple matchups in which I think bringing Noctils might be a little bit better circumstantially, but in general, Luther Harkin is just one of those lords that can carry games super hard. We have 2 cannons as well, and this was a little bit of a tricky map. It's a lot of terrain, a lot of hills. Thankfully, I do have a nice little perch up here, but the issue is he can close the distance very quickly and get in missile range rather easily, so I'm really going to have to move my force forward and try and buffer against his Dark Elf advance. So I have 2 Carronades, one here and one here. We do also have the Necrofex Colossus, who's quite happily taken up refuge here, and he's going to be dropping some firepower on Shades, the enemy lord, pretty much whatever he can get his paws on. We have 2 groups of Scurvy Dogs, one up here on the high ground and one down here in the tree line looking to get on the Shades. It's pretty important in this matchup because Shades are just such a good counter against so many tools on the Vampire Coast roster. You really need to, at some point, if not in the beginning, eventually get your dogs on top of the Shades, or you're probably going to be losing that game. So this is my entire build here. I do also have a Vampire Fleet Captain of Vampires and one group of Depth Guard here in the back as a lawnmower unit, basically just to protect Carronades against harass and eventually push out and fight once the fighting gets a little bit more saturated. So for my opponent's build in the front line, he's got a combination of Corsairs, which are quite good against the zombies. Very, very good at cutting through the chaff. He has a couple Bleak Swords as well, some Dread Spears in the secondary in case I bring some Mourngulls or other large monstrous units, but Shades are really going to be the bread and butter of this army. He has 3 Shades, a bunch of Harpies up in the sky, Dark Riders all over the map. So it looks like he has 1, 2, 3... Is there 4 of them? No, it looks like that's a Harpy over there. But Dark Riders are a great tool, and usually if I play Dark Elves against Coast, I like to bring 2 or 3 of them myself because they're really good at shutting down Scurvy Dogs. They're about the same speed, give or take, and they can keep pace and beat them in combat. He does have a Firecaster as well with the classic Burning Head, Fireball, and Flaming Sword of Ruin, and actually a little bit off meta as it pertains to his lord choice. He does have the High Beastmaster, which I was not expecting. I just thought this was, when I saw this, it just in my mind, I was like, oh, Marathi or Malekith. I didn't even register that it was a Manticore, so he does have the Tormentor Sword as well as the Whiplash, so he can certainly do a ton of anti-large damage against Luther if I'm not careful. That's pretty much it, guys. So let's get this show on the road. And remember, this is the best of 3 in Arrows tournament. So if you guys want to see the details regarding the tournament, there will be a link in the comment section below where you can see the brackets and all that good stuff. And we'll go from there. So the battle is underway here. Cannons, I immediately just train them on top of the High Beastmaster, but my opponent ParkMap here does run into the tree line, still takes a cannonball to the face, and I didn't really register the threat here. I just decided to fight. I was like, all right, let's get Luther, let's go fisticuffs here against the Harpies, let's see what we can do, and basically, getting some decent damage against the Harpies. We've taken out 6 models, but now the High Beastmaster is coming in as well, and he's a pretty good anti-large duelist, and at this point I was like, oh, I better run away, but I was like, oh wait, it's a Tormentor Sword! So I couldn't run away, brutal stuff, so I do respond with an Invocation of Nehek, just single target, trying to heal up Luther, and at least we're getting some good damage back. The cannonballs, of course. Oh, I think there was some friendly fire there. I was wondering where that burst of damage came from. Nasty stuff. So let's go ahead and just kind of unpack everything real quick. So basically here I'm running, I'm crumbling. Really, really bad start for sure. Frontline engagement's pretty much underway. Bombers have gotten some decent shots in here. I was able to get some okay AoE damage to them. Zombies have engaged in the front line. On the flank, dogs are running from the Dark Riders. Cannons are still shooting happily. Depth Guard and Colossus also still shooting happily. And my other doggos, basically, I just had to fall back with all my Scurvy Dogs because my opponent had such good corral, he was really able to force me back. On top of that, all the Shades up in the sky are shooting against Luther, so I'm like, okay, I gotta just panic here, I gotta run a little bit, I gotta reset, because the beginning of the battle went so poorly. Granted, some of the frontline fights are going okay. My Scurvy Dogs, I'm just kind of parking back here, waiting for an opportunity to just kind of drift up and around the formation and go after the Shades. And in the back, Luther is kiting pretty well. He does send his Dark Riders into combat against my Carronades, which I have the Zombie Pirate Deckhand mobs, I have Depth Guard back here, and it looks like some of the Harpies are opting to go after the Carronades, which is fine. Luther is actually outrunning them rather well. They have 82 speed against his 90, so he can kite them and shoot them, so just trying to stabilize, really. On the ground, Depth Guard are going to make super quick work here of the Harpies, so this is actually a really good situation for me. It gets rid of a couple brass units, opens up the Scurvy Dogs, and from here the Carronades are going to be secure, and I can now start shooting at the High Beastmaster as he chases me. So Luther's still running and crumbling, taking incremental damage here, so yeah, just trying to get away, but it's tricky. Thankfully, Manticores are slower than the Terror Gooses, so I am able to keep distance, and now my Scurvy Dogs who were parked behind the formation are able to get up and around, And we're going to be collapsing on top of the shades. And killing the shades is probably one of the most important things in the entire matchup. Like, hands down. Luther is able to get away. Harpies are chasing, but my opponent makes a wise choice not to chase anymore with the Beastmaster and does bring him back to the battlefield. Granted, you can see here a lot of the shades are just fully surrounded by the scurvy dogs. So the scurvy doggos are going to be feasting on the souls of these shades here, but we won't be staying too long because, again, the High Beastmaster is coming and he could potentially do some pretty good damage to these doggos. You can see the frontline engagement not going badly. A lot of the Bleak Swords as well as the Corsairs are being pushed back. We were able to get a couple of bombing volleys, which did some really good damage. And honestly, yeah, it was a pretty good engagement of the front line. We do also drop a summon over here with these zombie pirate gunnery mobs to chase down the shades and try and shoot them with the pistol. So just trying to control the shades a little bit. This flank has completely collapsed, however. So now this is how you want to play Depth Guard in this matchup. Basically, you save them till the bitter end. You don't send them in first because it's a very easy choice for your opponent to just shoot them with the shades. So you send them in later. They're able to get a great counter charge here against the Dark Riders. And they should be able to honestly win this entire engagement. If you look at everything here, it's what Dread Spears and Dark Riders. Depth Guard are designed to buzzsaw through such troops and they'll honestly take almost no casualties from this entire fight. Over here, the summon's doing quite well, and also we were able to summon some zombie gunnery mobs over here. The carronade pressure really does add up, and it's super high micro. Like, if you're being focused by 2 cannons and a Colossus like the entire game, if you slip up for even a second on one of those volleys, you're going to go down to like 60-50%. So it really is high micro for sure. We are able to force back the High Beastmaster. He's currently broken. Looks like we might be able to get him 321. Looks like a Burning Skull is going to be going down to the back. My opponent dropping it, and the cannons do they make contact. It looks like it is a little bit of a swing and a miss. I'm trying to get you guys a cinematic shot, and there it is, the cannon with the direct hit, taking out the dreaded High Beastmaster. In the meantime, Luther's just been kind of running and cackling. He did almost get killed by the Harpies, but I was able to kind of get away from them. He has much better mass. And now we're in a pretty secure position. I try and juke the Fireball, but I end up flying right into it, which is quite unfortunate. But the Carronades are in good shape. Depth Guard are in good shape. Our Vampire Caster is in really good shape as well. And for the most part, there are some shades still online, but Luther is just going to be going deep now. And the fact that he was able to live is pretty disastrous here for the forces of the Dark Elves, as I'm going to be getting some healing, and it's going to be really tough for the Elves to come back at this point. So we do finish off the Sorceress of Fire, at least break her. High ground engagement is won. The Depth Guard rocking 127 kills. Absolutely ludicrous on those guys. And the Colossus is still in really good shape as well. So well played to my opponent. It was a really good initial catch. He almost won the game there, honestly. Like, I may have been able to win it without Luther. It would have been really, really tough. I mean, honestly, he didn't do too much other than run the entire game, but it was a really good catch. The High Beastmaster caught me off guard, I have to admit. I wasn't expecting it. I'm so used to seeing Marathi and Malekith and these characters that it didn't even conceptualize in my mind that it could be a Tormentor sword and he could be locking me in place. So it was a really good play. He almost gooned me out really quickly, and as far as the rest of his army goes, I think it's quite good. I really do like the shades for sure, but again, they need to be protected. I think diving the Carronades in the back was, I don't know, yeah, it's hard to say. I think just protecting the shades is like the most important thing, because eventually they push forward, they kill the Colossus, they kill the Carronades. Obviously, a couple other tweaks to the build. I mean, I probably am more of a fan of Marathi or Malekith or those type of characters. The Corsairs aren't bad. Honestly, I think that Bleak Swords accomplished like something very similar, though. I think you just go a little bit cheaper and then get like a 4th shade, and that just gives you a lot more punching power and get more like backline defense and things like that. But it was a really close game, and he played really well. He almost got me in the beginning. It was still a relatively fast game at about 4.5 minutes, but it was a scrappy one and really, really down to the wire. I was on the ropes for the first minute or two, absolutely. So very well played to my opponent, ParkMap. This was actually our first map in the best of 3. So now, guys, we're going to be jumping on over to game 2. So all of the games, of course, in the tournament, with the exception of the finals, I would imagine, are going to be best of 3. So we're going to see, guys, if I can keep going or if ParkMap is going to be able to scrap this game back and take me out. So, guys, we'll see you in game 2, which features my greenskins against his beastmen. All right, my friends, and now we're back with game 2, which features my greenskins against his beastmen. So this is a matchup I haven't played in quite some time, but greenskins are actually, believe it or not, you guys might not see them a ton on the channel, are one of my favorite factions to play in tournaments. So as far as the build goes, we're going to be bringing a ton of anti-large, because the meta for the beastmen is as follows. You look at his build, that is very similar to what you typically see in the meta. You see Ungor spear herds in the front line, just very, very chaff and kind of haggard infantry, and then from there they use Razor Gores and Minotaurs to just run you over and try and overwhelm your position. It's very strong for sure. So that in mind, I have a bit of a counter build. I wouldn't say it's like a hard counter, but it does pretty well. We have Goblin Wolf Rider archers in the front line. We do also have the Morgub Smashing Marauders, and these guys are great. They can counter skirmish Centigores, throwing axes, they can shoot at the piggies. They're really good at kiting down Minotaurs and finishing them off. And also it gives you utility in the late game to kind of chase down routing units. I love these guys in this matchup. We do also have a couple Goblin Wolf Rider, no, Forest Goblin Spider Rider archers, 2 of those. Again, just a tar pit unit, battlefield control unit. They apply poison, they're sticky, and relatively tanky for the cost. Now for the infantry, pretty self-explanatory. It's going to be Biggins across the sunset. Going to be 3 standard Orc Biggins, and then also 2 groups of Savage Orc Biggins in the back line. These guys are great. Anti-large against Minotaurs, good against pigs, relatively speaking, and yeah, just good against most of the Beastmen troops. The one thing they would struggle with, it would probably be a very traditional Bestigor front line. But pretty much no Beastmen players play with Bestigors anymore. It's always like Minotaurs and Razorgors and things like that. We do also have the Ragnarok Queen here, which is also a staple. Very good against Gorbals, has anti-large. The spider summons are incredibly powerful, and this guy does a lot of work. On top of that, we have the Durkid Squig Hoppers. These guys are great at clearing out infantry. And in the back, we have a Night Goblin Shaman with the Itchy Nuisance and the staff, the Obsidian Rod, actually, to get more Winds of Magic. And we have Wurzug. Wurzug is going to be coming in with a Brainbuster as well as Fist of Gork and the Bonewood Staff, which obviously is very, very powerful. Bonewood Staff, whenever he casts a spell, just does a huge force multiplying effect. Now, Wurzug is a little bit risky in matchups in which you're worried about your Lord being sniped by like Spirit Leeches and Vampire Lords and Firepower, but against Beastmen, I think he's a really safe pick. Azag's really good as well. Over here, we do have, like I said, the Wolf Rider Archers, and now for the Beastmen army, pretty not self-explanatory, but something that you see fairly often. Ungor Spears in the front line. He does also have some Ungors. Looks like, just mainly Chaff Infantry, Razorgors, Minotaurs in the back, Butchers of Kalkengard, Minotaurs with Shields are a good choice against my skirmishing, and he does also have one group of great weapons, which I like. In case I bring like a Spider or Giants or things like that, he will have some dedicated anti-large. He's got some pigs all around the flank. Work with the Shadowgave, and for his caster, he does also have a Brave Shaman and a Wild, so there's going to be a ton of summons. The balance of power is going to be pretty much Beastman favored for the entire game up until I can endure those summons. So here I'm going to be falling back, and I did notice that the Brave Shaman was getting a little bit crunk here, so what I opt to do is I use the Effigy of the Git, so I lock him in place because, a little bit overextended. I get a lot of Focus Fire, and then Wurzug as well as my Spider are going to be coming in for a huge gooning attempt, and here you can see that the Brave Shaman of the Wild is going to be taking a ton of damage here, going down to half health, but it looks like that's actually my summon. So basically, knowing there's Minotaurs nearby, I wanted to use some Spiders to kind of block their charge to potentially allow me to finish off the Brave Shaman, but the Brave Shaman was able to get away, unfortunately, so I can't really afford to overchase that. Now, at this point, going to be falling back. My opponent has a much wider army, you can see across the battlefield, so I don't want to take the straight-up engagement. I want to fall back, form a bit of a defensive concave, and just try and get those good engagements. So here, the Spiders are fighting the Minotaurs, kind of holding them back, and now the Ragnarok Queen does need to run back. The Minotaurs plus the Razorgors are all very good here. I do pop the wall and then prepare to charge in the front line. So Orc Biggins will be engaging in the front. Here I do also have some Savage Orc Biggins who are going to be kind of wading through my missile line and coming to help out the Spider. And of course the Orc Biggins should be able to win against the Chaff. Now Minotaurs are going to be coming in. This will hurt pretty bad, but at least the Biggins do have an anti-large, so they can kind of chop back and potentially do some decent damage in that engagement. So if we look here, the Minotaurs are taking a lot of damage. My entire Goblin Wolf Rider Archer core is shooting into the Minotaurs and doing some really good damage. The pigs are forced back, and honestly, this is a pretty rough situation for the Beastmen here. As you can see, the Minotaurs and the pigs are all pushed back at the very little cost. I didn't take much damage here. Now on this side of the battlefield, things are a little bit more precarious. The Centaurs are charging in, pigs are coming in, my Orc Biggins have intercepted here, and then the Spider Riders will be, of course, countercharging and engaging against Centaurs. But I'm taking some damage here. Savage Orc Biggins are trying their best, but they're just being overwhelmed by the sheer number of troops, and they're not terribly tanky. They only have 22 melee defense, their Frenzy's now gone, so a bit of a scary situation. We do use the Itchy Nuisance here to lower the combat stats of all these troops, trying to give my Biggins more of a fighting chance, and they all honestly did really good, able to kind of punch back and deal a ton of damage against the Centaurs, but the Minotaurs and the Chaff were able to break through the front line, and eventually I just crumped my Biggins here. So if we look, this side has pretty much gone to the Beastmen. I have a couple troops still fighting over there, but for the most part, the Beastmen have a more powerful position here. But this side is actually going very, very well for me. I have a Savage Orc Biggins kind of fighting here. Granted, summons are now coming in. So the first Cygor summon has been used here. The Brave Shaman once again almost getting taken out, but he does get that Cygor summon off, which means he's going to be able to drop some rocks. And the Cygor is basically like a Walmart giant. It's really not bad. And the spawn summon. So this is where Beastmen become very scary. They're able to find the engagement that I can't really run from, drop a ton of summons here, and they're going to be getting some good value against my Savage Orcs. Granted, the Savage Orc Biggins are also chopping down the Chaos Spawn at a rather quick rate. So in the back, I was trying to get the Brave Shaman. He's broken like 3 or 4 times over the course of the battle, so Wurzug was going on a special agent mission back there to try and get him, but the Brave Shaman ends up breaking anyways, which was quite a good situation. But here in the center, you can see my Orc spawn, the Orc Biggins as well as the Biggins are getting a little bit worn down. Thankfully, my mobile missile line is doing really, really well, able to just absolutely destroy the Butchers of Kalkengard and ultimately make for a pretty good engagement. But my Ragnarok Queen has been taking a lot of damage, and honestly, if you really look at my army, aside from the Queen, I don't have too much value. I mean, most of it's just kind of a beat up cab units here and there, and most of my infantry are very defeated here. So some of the pigs do come back from route here. I am going to be countercharging with all the goblins, just trying to get an immediate break. I also do pull in the Ragnarok Queen, try to break those guys back, but Minotaurs are coming in as well. Got to be a little bit careful. So I do try and run those guys down while they're in this big kind of ugly blob here. My infantry are still doing pretty well. You can see Morka the Shadowgave actually in sustained combat has taken almost lethal damage here from the just raw output here of the Biggins and the Bonewood Staff. But the summons are just really giving the Beastmen second legs here. I mean, without the summons, it would just be an absolute disaster for the Beastmen here. But again, they paid for it, so they should be getting value. So here the Queen is going to be going in, but I did not pay attention. These are actually the great weapons, so it's probably the last thing I should have engaged. But I figured that the Queen, with a little bit of focus fire from the Wolf Rider archers, would be able to win this. So we get some good focus fire downtown. Wurzog does charge back in, and the Minotaurs are taking some casualties, but my Queen is taking irreparable damage. I mean, obviously you can't heal, and I should have been much more careful, just kited these guys, because now I'm actually in a bit of a bad situation. My entire center mass gets broken down by the pigs here, as well as the resurgence of some Ungor spearmen. And it looks like there's another summon coming down. That's actually my spider hatchlings. So that is going to kind of help the Queen get away. But yeah, the Arachnoid Queen's in really bad shape. So just to make sure it doesn't break, I use Get Back here with Wurzog to give him a little bit more leadership. I summoned some spiders to try and halt this advance. And suddenly, in a situation in which I thought my blob was going to win, I'm behind the bounce of power. The beastmen are swarming all over the place, and we're in a very, very scary situation. So if we take big inventory of the battlefield, the beastmen do have Ungor spearmen here, some Ungor here. I have some biggins in the distance, as well as some cav units that were able to clean up some centaurs in the back, including the Dirkit Squig Hoppers. But it's really important to make sure that the Arachnoid Queen doesn't get chased off the battlefield. If it does, I pretty much 100% lose this game. There's a ton of Minotaurs left, Morker's in good shape, and without, the spider to kind of wail on Morker here, I am in really, really big trouble. So basically, I throw in all my Spider Riders for a moment. I'm just going to be cycle charging them, trying to get them in combat to peel and allow the Arachnoid Spider to get away. And it looks like a spawn summon should be disappearing here soon. I think that's an older one. I can't quite tell. It's a little bit tricky. But nonetheless, I know I have pretty good ammo. So we kite back with the spiders. Hopefully we'll be able to pick off the centaurs. And knowing that the centaurs are one of the few units here that can keep up with the spider very easily, I do use an FG of the Get. I turn around and get some focus fire, so there's magic damage coming in. There's missile damage coming in from the Wolf Riders. And again, I'm just trying to stabilize the Arachnoid Queen. I need to get this back, or else the game is pretty much over. And even if I do get it back, it's far from over. There's still a ton of Minotaurs left. So missile pressure coming in. Forest Goblin Spider Riders have rallied here in the back and are going to be charging in, doing some poking damage here against Minotaurs, but mainly just allowing my spider to rally, which is quite nice. You can see here the Spider Riders doing a really, really good job. Also do send in some of the Wolf Riders, just trying to halt their advance, and some Spiderlings are going to be used over here to halt the advance of the Beastmen Infantry. The Orc Biggins a little bit sloppy here. I need to get those guys back in, and the Razorgore Herds here were actually able to finish off my Goblin Shaman. So now you can see once my Goblin Shaman has fallen, he did have a spell and also the really good Winds of Magic item. The Bounce Fire does go in the favor of the Beastmen, guys. So looking a little bit grim bones here, but the Spider has now gotten a pretty good buffer here from the Beastmen, so I should be able to get it back here in a moment. You can see some of the Centaurs are getting danger close, but they're very beat up. And they're also taking a ton of missile pressure, and we do end up rallying the Arachnoid Queen, which is really big. So now it's time for the final battle. The Beastmen are surging up to the tree line. You can see they have the Minotaurs, Ungors, and the problem for me is that this entire time, Morker the Shadow Cave is also healing. This bad boy's coming back to life, and it's going to be a huge issue to deal with him. The Spider does have 1100 HP, which is pretty good, and 150 armor. So in combat against Morker, he's got a pretty good situation. Morker doesn't have the best AP values, but now you can see a lot of pressure coming in. We also do have a Spider Summon, so I'm going to be dropping a Spider Summon in between the Minotaurs, and now it's going to create a bit of a buffer. Some of the Minotaurs get stuck here. These ones overextend a little bit, so now I can basically turn around with the Squig Hoppers, who did come back from finishing off Centaurs. You get a good charge here. We have a ton of missile pressure coming in. Wurzog comes in as well, getting huge damage, and some of the Minotaurs are getting punched down the hill. So we break those guys off. Those were the ones with shields, not the really important ones to finish off. But unfortunately, the Beastmen are quite persistent here, still ahead of the bounce power. And knowing my spider is in a very precarious situation, I send in the Wolf Riders. I have to at this point. Some of them do have the buffs from the Bonewood Staff, so they're actually not bad in combat. And I know if I can use them as a buffer and kind of just fight on the periphery of the fight. Oh, and a Brain Buster coming down, huge! The Beastmen were super clumped up, so Wurzog was able to get a huge Brain Buster, just nuking the chaff away. Now, there still are some Ungors and more Ungors coming in, but that's pretty big. Chain routes can be a pretty significant thing against low leadership factions. And the Spider is actually in a really good space here. It's behind the tree. It's able to get great attacks on the Razorgores, and only a couple Minotaurs are able to kind of push past these Spider Riders at a time and get in there and actually deal with the Spider. So it's a very, very dicey situation, but nonetheless pretty good for me. Wurzog charges in as well. Wurzog does have a pretty good charge bonus here of 86. Also able to give the leadership buff to the Spider, which is now down to 711 HP. You can see here Morker the Shadow Cave basically just going Mortal Kombat here with the Meiji Marauders, who are now going to break. But they've really kind of done their job. They've been able to kind of hold back the advance. And now you can see a bit of a mass exodus here from the Beastmen. A lot of elite troops are running, or quote-unquote elite. Razorgores are running. My Wolf Rider archers, like I said in the beginning, are very, very good at chasing down these units. So we're going to be making a pretty conscious effort to chase down these elite units. Up on the high ground, we do have the Dirkit Squigs, who are going to be chasing off Butchers of Kalkengard. And for anyone who's new to the game, I highly recommend if you can break something of value, just chase it off with something of lesser value. And obviously like a mobile skirmish cab type unit, and you're going to be in good shape. So here we are going to be dropping Fist of Gork here, giving these Wolf Rider archers 51 melee attack. And we're coming in for the fight now. So Wurzog is going to be charging into Morker. We also do have the Spider coming in. So basically we're just going to be alternating here and cycle charging where we can, because again, we are attacking with other units. But oh man, for a second I saw that. I even got a little bit nervous on the replay. I was like, oh, is that a spawn summon? But no, it's actually just my spiderlings doing their thing here. So now Morker's kind of getting worked on a little bit. Wurzog is not a bad combatant in terms of his offensive output. He does have 51 melee attack, so you can certainly hit very hard. And you can see here that Morker is getting a little bit low in the danger zone, but still has plenty of room before his healing cap. Ounce of Power for the first time in the game has gone in my favor here. So Wolf Rider archers are going to be chasing up here, and we do have a bit of a cockfight against the Butchers of Kalkengard on the high ground, who unfortunately I was not able to chase off. And you look how powerful they are, like how much difference they can make in the late game. They're able to break off like all those Spider Riders. But basically here we have the Biggins coming back in. So some of the Biggins basically hustled from all the way across the map. They come in here, we use Get Back here, and now the Biggins and company are able to break off the Shadow Gave. And the Spider's coming in as well. And that is pretty much going to spell doom for the Beastmen. So very well played to ParkMap. That was a really stressful, just fierce cockfight. And in the end, we were able to narrowly pull it out with a little bit of a Wolf Rider kiting and then eventually taking the big Alpha Strike engagements, using summons to block the advances of the Beastmen while we picked off high value targets. And yeah, it was a really, really good game. So super well played, man, down to the wire. So in the end, I do end up winning that series 2-0, but a little bit deceiving, obviously, in terms of like the overall gameplay. The games were really close, and either of those games could have gone either way at several points. He played really well, and it was an amazing series. So as far as the build goes, I like it. I think I might actually change out the Savage Orc Biggins and just get one more regular Biggin, then from there maybe get like some Skulkers or something with a little bit of slow. I don't know, or maybe even more skirmishing. I felt like the non-armored variants got crumped pretty good, and the regular Orc Biggins with even their 50 armor held a lot better, and they're cheaper also. I don't know. I mean, Savage Orc Biggins can definitely do some good work, but they're a little bit more expensive. So yeah, probably cut one of these guys, go for 2 of the Orc Biggins, and just go from there. But I really like the build. I might opt to try Azag as well. He's pretty good at sniping casters and things like that. He also causes terror. So having another big terror-causing unit against Beastmen is always good. But yeah, I mean, I feel like Wurzog is pretty damn solid in this matchup. The Brain Buster was really clutch. The Bonewood Staff is super powerful for those like wide fights. There's so many things that are good for the Hoglord. Yeah, so again, very well played at ParkMap, and guys, make sure to check out the comment section below to see the link to Aerocrastic's tournament. It is in progress, so as I do progress and get eliminated, probably eventually from the tournament, I'll make sure to give you guys a link in the comment section below so you can see all that progress and follow the tournament. It's quite a bit of fun. A lot of people that you guys know are playing in the tournament that you see, friends of the channel, some new faces. It's always a good time, and I love playing in tournaments. Just normally I can't because my hand, it's hard to get through. However, this one is offline, so I'm able to play my games like one day at a time, which is really cool. So I'm not going to be at any issue with my hand, which is great. So well played to ParkMap again. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this tournament series, and we'll be back with more tournament gameplay soon. See you guys next time. Cheers.